Hello, I'm Earl, and welcome to this very special edition. I have a very interesting guest, that not a stranger at all. Young politician, number 3 on the PFP list. Miss Ludmila, Weever, how you doing?
I'm good. Hello to you and hello to the viewers and listeners, whichever way that we're getting them. It's always a pleasure to be here. This has been something, like coming on your program, I remember from the days of my aunt Millicent and then watching my dad, and it makes it feel like we're really in the campaign mode. We're really in election season, and it's an honor to be here talking to you always. Well, so thank you for having me.
It's good to have you. And how's the campaign trail going?
This has been a really interesting one because of the fact that, for me personally, I did a lot of work about a year before our January 2024 election, especially because I was with a new party, that party being Party for Progress, PFP, or what everyone knows as the gold standard. Having to be back here at 7 months later on, it's not ideal. It has been frustrating. The sentiments that the public is feeling is exactly what most of us are feeling, most of us being candidates. And the reality is that, we're here again, and we're here again because of certain individuals and their plans, perhaps their selfish plans, to bring us right back here again, to further cause mistrust in the system. And my message to the public is, don't let them win. Don't let those people win. And if you see that we were back here 17 days after a new government was sworn in, what you should think about is vote against that the next time. Vote for a difference for it. And that's really what I want to get out there.
Oh, that's great. I see. The gold standard.
Yes, indeed.
That's what I'm seeing, gold behind you in your name.
Yes. Yes, but it's I'm very proud of where I am and what we have been able to accomplish. And even for me, you have to listen to the people and what they want. And I think a lot of that came into what you saw happen, for instance, in the results that I had in January versus before that when I ran the first time. And a big part of it is the fact that I was outspoken. I was saying the things that make other people uncomfortable to say. I was meeting the public with truth, which is, even if it's uncomfortable, we need to say it and they need to hear it. And I did that on a party on PFP, which is known for being direct, which is known for discussing the things that would make us uncomfortable, and being brave to stand up and say that. And I really, this time, it's so interesting that in January now versus, July going up into the August election is what I'm hearing the most of is people saying that I didn't hear as much beforehand. We're really proud of you. Keep talking the truth, because no one else stood up and said, stop TFIT. And I said, what do you mean? And they were like, no, you said the things that we wanted to hear. You said the things that we wanted to look for in our representatives. You were telling us the truth, and it was tough. And thanks for saying that. And it's been people that can't even vote as well that have been saying it, that heard that message. But the message, the sort of takeaway from this message is, give people the truth, acknowledge what our issues are on the island, and give them solutions for those issues, rather than false promises and nice talks and nice words and a silver tongue. Just let us know, or let the people know, what is happening and how you plan on tackling the issues that we are facing in this country.
The name Ludi, you shorten your name.
So, no, everyone knows me as Ludi. So my full name is Ludmila the Weever, but everyone knows me as Ludi from the time I was a toddler. Ludi has been my nickname, and it's the one that they sort of remember. Ludmila is a long name; it's a mouthful, and so we just decided to just go with the Ludi part of it this time around. Make it a little bit more easy for people to grasp onto, to hold on to, as in, oh, that's Ludi. Full name is Ludmila the Weever. So that's the reason behind it. And it came from my grandfather, actually. Félix Choisy is who gave me that nickname. Normally, the nickname for Ludmila, which is a Slavic name, Russian name, is usually Luda or Mila, But of course, Felix wanted to do things a little different, think outside of the box, and hence Ludi.
Well, I hope you don't feel offended. When you said Mila, I have a dog. She's a beautiful dog. And her name is Mila.
Mila is a beautiful name.
Cool,
Mila is a beautiful name. It is a beautiful name. If I didn't have the nickname Ludi, probably would have been Mila.
You have dogs?
I do. I had 5 dogs, and now I'm down to 2. The ones that I have one is a rescue and one is a miracle.
Okay.
The other one is a miracle because my dad had a German Shepherd that could never have babies, and then right before the end of her life, she had babies and then died.
Wow.
And so I raised one, survived, and that was the one I raised from day one. And that's my dog, and the name is Sarid, which means survivor in Hebrew.
Amazing. No, I love dogs. So when you're driving your car, what you listen to? What kind of music?
So you see, it depends, right? So driving my car, it'll probably be some old-time Zouk Malavoie, or it will be some house music, dance music, depending on the mood. Or soca. It depends on the mood. If I'm trying to get pumped up for work, it'll be house dance music because it's like energizing. If I'm just happy, it'll be soca. So yeah, it's.
I can't even recommend you Hot 99.9 FM because
actually,
cool country.
no. So this is what happens. So let me correct that. This is from my playlist. This is from the playlist on my phone. But I have to commend you because Hot 99 was playing some old tunes like the oldies but goodies from like the 80s and 90s. And I'm an 80s baby. I'm born in 1980. So I loved it because it had on like, like when you see like All Stars.
Yeah.
It's like this is a thing. Like it just reminds
all
me.
The hits from
it brings back great memories of when my mom and dad had a kids clothing store in Marigot. And they would always play these songs that were like popular hits back then, like Kool and the Gang, All Stars. Like it was just the best hits. And the weird thing is that these songs are memorized, right? Because you heard them so much in the days, and you still know the words to them,
right?
Like 30 years later. So no, I do love Hot 99. So let me correct that.
Okay. All right. So you stood for a lot of issues through your political career. Taxes. I remember one time you mentioned that also on one of my shows.
Yes.
How do you feel about that, tax reform?
So, for people who aren't familiar with me, my background is finance and economics. And one of the things that I've noticed in St. Martin and also experienced myself is that, we've always had a very successful country as we were developing. And this basically went on, I would say, back up, all the way up to 1995, right. Still going a little bit in the reconstruction after Hurricane Lewis in 95. And then it started to taper off. And, our population was increasing as well, but it was tapering off. And while things may have worked for us better off in the past, like right. Over 15, 20 years ago, what's happening now to us is not working anymore. And this is why also the government, has been long overdue for a tax overhaul, a tax reform, especially when we went into this new status in 2010, since 10-10-10, when we have this new country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands status. And while you have persons that are encouraging small businesses or small entrepreneurs, micro businesses, nothing, in my opinion, will change if we don't change our tax system, because we don't get any breaks for small businesses. And small businesses can be that one single person. It could be a company with 2 persons going all the way up to maybe even 30, because we don't really have a definition based on quantity or turnover. We haven't really defined that properly here. And I think it's problematic that we are trying to thrive in a situation, in an environment, in a tax environment that doesn't allow us to do so. So we have challenges here that being out in the field, the one recurring theme or messages that I hear as the issues of this country are the spending power, buying power of our citizens, our housing and healthcare. Now, for me, whenever I talk about taxes, I remember being on your program where I said, if I was paying attention when I was in as Minister of Teyat, one of the things that kept coming up was people, the recommendations that was coming to government was about bringing in import taxes, was about bringing in car tax, and then reviving a dormant tax that we also had on property. And it's been there in the legislation, but we never collected on it. And I, for one, do not agree that we have any new taxes unless we fix what we have there, adjust what we have there, because we are already hurting. The way that we're operating and that the government is earning revenue is literally the same persons, the same businesses that have been paying taxes. They're going to continue. We're going always at the same people. We're not trying to broaden the base of it. And this is why there's been this drive towards indirect taxes where more persons can contribute. And the reason I bring up the property tax bit is that was something that was brought up in the Best Islands. If you remember, and a lot of people, some people couldn't deal with it. They sold their property. Some people had many issues trying to get money to pay their property taxes. And my issue with property tax is the fact that, and this will come up, and I've heard persons talking about it, my issue with property tax is the minute we have a property tax, we really don't own anything. Because at the end of the day, we will be a victim to any bad intentions by any person in there. If we don't pay it, is the one thing that we have been able to hold on to, the one thing that we have there that is our own. And I'll give you an example of what I'm hearing on the road and what struggles we are having in terms of the way that the ministries operate. And let's say, for instance, we have a spouse, the spouse passed away. I'm going to say that, the husband passed away. He left it to his wife. And we have property taxes on there. And the wife is, trying to figure out, is in a scenario where she's trying to figure out whether or not she needs medical attention. She's going to try and sell her property and then proceed to go live with children, for instance. But then you're seeing that you're hindered by a property tax that's out there that's open for a long time, and it doesn't work for me. On the other scenario, what we're having related to that is also an issue with transfer fees. What is very, very, very problematic in the last 2 years is you've had a Ministry of ROMI, which has been delaying transfer of people's properties. And the same scenario of an elderly lady who needed to have medical attention, who wanted to go, sell her property, be able to get her medical services done and go proceed to live with her kids. This person wanted to sell their land that happened to be long lease government land. And what they found themselves in is that they are basically delayed and held sort of hostage by the fact that they have not been able to get a transfer of their land to the buyer of that property. The issue that has is you have a government that all of a sudden was holding them hostage, and then the minute that they would try to sell the land to someone else, they will jack up the prices of your airpacht, for instance, of your cannon on it. And that's not fair. That's not fair to our people. That is really, really sort of almost extortion to a certain extent. And for me, the way around this is trying to decide whether or not as a country that is in charge of, let's say, your canon, whether or not you might even have to consider the way that we handle long lease property when it's been in a family for over 60 years and not hold people hostage to that. And for me, it requires a revamp. It requires a complete revamp of our system. I can talk to you forever about taxes, but I see you want to say something.
Because,
go ahead.
Because what happened, there was a loophole that if you had government long lease land and it had a building on it, you didn't need government permission to sell that. If the long lease property had no structure on it, you needed government permission. What happened?
I absolutely did. And I'm glad you put it that way, because it's very unfortunate, because right now that has been the issue that happened in the previous. So this is before January 2024, the previous administration. And that's why I'm telling you, when I'm out on the campaign trail, I am having these complaints of people who are blocked, who are having their hands tied. Because what has happened is, for those two, let's say you gave a perfect example. If you had government long lease land and you built something on it, you didn't require the approval. But right now, it required an approval on the previous administration, which has basically delayed people's plans.
Wow.
The problem with that is that if you have that scenario of an elderly lady who was left the land or the building, the structure upon that land by her husband, who wants to sell it to have some money to do her medical, and then also her plan was to go live with her kids. She's unable to do so
because she needs government approval.
Correct. Okay. And you have to think of, I know specifically that one of the ways that this has been happening is while you needed to adjust certain canons, when you see that you're charging people 30 guilders for a property somewhere, let's say Simpson Bay, right? Just say right here on Simpson Bay, you're charging them 30 guilders for the last 60 years. The danger with what they're doing is they're basically delaying and restricting this process in order to jack up the prices of the canon. This is what happened previously, and this is what I'm not going to tolerate, because it's an unfair practice. And when you're talking about empty land, yes, you needed approval for it, and you want to make sure that people avoid the fact that if they had an empty plot of land that was government land, that they speculate on it and they sell it off at a profit, because that's not the purpose of it. When you get long lease land from government, it comes with a purpose and condition that you improve it, you build upon it. And the big risk that we have is, I am not against government having a way to earn their revenue, but if you're going to earn your revenue in a very shady practice of jacking up the price, of basically delaying a process for transferring the land title in order for you to jack up the prices of the canon on it, the land rent, the ground rent on it, that is unfair. That is an unfair practice which we are dealing with today. The complaints have gone into the Ombudsman's office about it, and the public needs to demand better from their representatives to not allow the same kind of people to go in and do that. It's a big problem that we're having, and it's not helping our people.
In case you just joined us, we're speaking with MP Ludmila de Weever. She's the number 3 candidate on the PFP party list, and she's currently a member of parliament, and she's contesting the August 19th parliamentary election here in St. Martin's. The thing is that you're one of the few outspoken members of parliament. You also spoke about the issues confronting young people, housing and so forth, social problems. How you have that changed? Or you?
Nothing. Nothing has really changed. What you're hearing from people, like I said earlier on, is something that's really related to your buying power, your spending power, and I feel like when you have persons in government in the executive branch, they have to be very brave to make certain decisions that may not be popular in the short term, but in the long term is going to help your people and give them more sort of survival, more thriving in our community. And one of those things, everyone wants to own their land, but if you've seen that when people are going out to request long lease land, they're being delayed by an approval if they want to pass it on to someone else, that is also part of the problem that you're going to create and not making it an incentive for them to come and ask for this stuff. On the other side, I do want to just briefly mention, right, when we're talking about the tax side of things, to allow businesses and small entrepreneurs to thrive, is to consider the way that we are collecting our taxes, whether TOT is what we pay on a monthly basis. It's 5% turnover tax. We also have a profit tax that you pay at the end of the year on your financials. If you're making a profit, that is around 35%. That has never been adjusted since 2010, which should, in my opinion, is one of the highest in the region, almost one of the highest in the world. Yeah. And it should just be eliminated. And what really upsets me is that when I first went into office in 2020, I wanted to eliminate it to zero because we hardly collect anything from it. Our main collection is on wage tax, on when you're working your salary every month, and then also on TOT from businesses. And the reason that I was very upset about it is that we wasted time when people felt that I was competing with them as the Minister of Economic Affairs. When I said profit tax should be zeroed out because we're hardly getting anything from it. And now what you have now is 4 years later, we're not allowed to basically zero out profit tax because of the developments that have happened internationally, where the countries have said in order to make a level playing field, what we have to do is
That was pushed by the U.S. government.
Correct. Globally, the lowest we can go is 15%, and that is part of our manifesto from PFP, is that we're pushing it down to 15%. That's the lowest we can go. And then I said this on an interview too, and I said, what's nice is that our proposals is being picked up by everybody else. And it's nice, and imitation is the best form of flattery, especially when it's good for your people. So I said, if they can take our manifesto, take some more things from it so that our country can really get ahead. Because this is one of the things that will sort of start rebuilding trust with our community, that we are making strides to improve our tax structure and fight for that reform. Now, another one of it is basically shifting also our earning base, our tax base. We go up to 50% when we're talking about our wage tax. Basically the simplifying the base of it, the range of it, as in you have a certain percentage for earning 0 to 20, you have another percentage earning 20 to 50, and then another percentage of tax higher than that. One of the big things that I am an advocate of, which I have mentioned from day one oral, is when I had the privilege of living abroad, where I paid attention to what was working abroad. And one of the things that I really have to do now and bring forward, that I have done from since I started getting involved in politics and government, are those good ideas. And one of those ideas is, in the absence of us being a very successful country in the sense of having a reserve there, a big pot of money that we can do things with, because we are struggling as a country with our financial responsibility, with our fiscal responsibility. And I said, in the absence of having a big pot of gold, we have to create incentives for persons to get involved and provide where we are lacking in that as a government. And everyone talks about housing. But how are you going to tell people you're going to build housing when we don't even know where we're going to get our land from? And then we don't know how we're going to get the money to build those houses, because we have been financially stuck and constrained. And one of the things that I said I'm going to revive again continuously is these incentives for us to provide for essential workers. I think it's a brilliant idea, not because it's coming from me, because it's one that doesn't cost the government that much money in the end. We have so many persons here that have been blessed to be able to build an apartment by their house, or a couple apartments by their house, or, maybe even get something like the elderly lady from her husband, God forbid, that unfortunately passed away. But we have so many persons that are actually now trying to earn additional money, side income, to supplement their lifestyle, the high cost of living here, and they're putting it on the market for Airbnb, for tourists. So it's short-term stays. And what happens when you do that is you're affecting your long-term stay. Yeah. You're affecting the persons on the island for housing. Any place, any city that is basically opening up to this kind of rental, rent goes up, and you have basically minimized the availability of housing. Yeah. And I said, and I'm going to say it very shortly, that break it down for the average person. Correct. Supply and demand. Correct. It's basically what happened is we have a shortage of housing, so because we have a shortage of housing, the prices are going to remain high. Yeah. And we also have landlords that aren't willing to sort of earn a lesser sort of rent, and they can earn more money by renting it out short term to tourists that are coming in. Depending, especially if you're in certain areas that are tourists along the coastlines or have beautiful views. Now, what I want to say about this incentive is, in my conversations, and we all know that there are certain essential workers in our community that have issues with their salaries because their salaries are low. These are the most important people for our community, and I will list them off. They're the police officers, they're the teachers, they're the nurses. We can't survive without nurses, the ambulance drivers, the firemen. We can't survive in our community without those essential workers. And what I took away from when I lived in London is that these essential workers were offered an incentive to basically live within the area that was considered, high price area, because you can't have all of your essential workers living outside in the outskirts. When an emergency happens, you need them here.
Exactly.
When you have to educate our children, you need the teachers living close by. And that incentive is for landlords, for persons that own property to be able to get an incentive instead of offering their premises to a even higher earning threshold, is to offer those to essential workers. And basically by doing that, you get them involved basically in your whole base, your tax base. You say, hey, Mr. Gibbs, you have 2 apartments there. We will offer you a tax incentive to be able to offer those, provide those to essential workers. This is what we need now, because we have to get creative.
And I think most people say yes to that.
If you give people because what happened is a lot of people on this island have long outstanding taxes. And, asking people to write off your taxes, a government is always so scared to do that. But you say, hey, we have a shortage. How are you willing to provide this housing to these essential workers? Here's the discount you get on a tax level. And for me, just to give a little bit of more of the story, what would happen in London, for instance, is any new development that came in that was an apartment building, it was 10% minimum you had to provide for essential workers. And now for me here, we have to adjust that because, we are trying to keep balance of our developments, but we're also trying to we want to keep balance of our developments, but we also need to provide more housing than just 10%. Mm-hmm. So we have to look at it, adjust it a little bit and say, I'm going to offer this tax incentive to someone who can provide a reduced rent so that you can help the essential workers that feel constrained, because most of the time people are saying after they pay their house rent, it's very hard for you to get your groceries, to pay your utility bills, to get the fuel on your car if you have a car. And this gives a really, really big chance for people to thrive. And if anyone, you can think of it of how you have rent control apartments in New York, for instance. Yeah. Everyone knows that story of rent control apartments in New York. You do it, it's not rent control with the rental committee, because we already struggle with a rental committee doing their job, but you do it as an incentive to those apartment owners that already have rented out to Airbnb, that have tenants. You help them out in a way that it balances out for them with their taxes, because all of our income has to be taxed anyways.
In case you've just joined us, this is a special edition with MP Ludmila de Weever. She's the number 3 candidate on the PFP party. They're contesting the August 19 parliamentary elections here in St. Martin. It's you touch on 2 very important things. What else is important to you when it comes to this campaign and getting back in government?
I think the public needs to understand that I do bring experience, not long experience, but I bring experience from a very sort of trying and difficult time when I went into office in COVID, when everybody was scared of something new. And I thrived in that situation where I pushed forward to open the country in a very organized manner, in a responsible manner. We were one of the first to be open, and I think knowing that I have that background history with it, that I feel like I'm a dependable option. In addition to that, when I moved on into Parliament, I feel like I've upped the quality of our questioning when it comes to our financial responsibility, where you have, our colleagues in Parliament questioning things from a financial perspective, as if they were even, auditors or accountants. And that is what I bring. I brought up things that was the truth and difficult for some people to admit, and what the public wanted to hear. So being brave, talking truth, giving comfort to the public of my ability to represent them with that truth and love for country at my center is what is important for me of a message to send out to the public, to be honest.
I gotta ask you this because, you was at this company for a while.
Oh.
And let me tell you, it hurts me. It hurts me to the bone when they see what's going on in Zimbabwe today and how the public is suffering for the lack of electricity, constant daily load shedding sometimes 2 or 3 times a day for well beyond the 2 hours that they claim they're doing. How you feel, because I know that you understand that company just as well as how I understand.
For lack of anything else, I was very upset. I was very upset of everything that has happened because I knew the potential of this company that I audited and then worked for. I knew where I left it when I left March 2020, when I went into office as minister of TEAT. And I know the warnings that I gave to the then Council of Ministers of what happens when you create a vacuum and you get rid of management all at the same time. I know what I warned them about in terms of creating this vacuum when you leave a company such as this, which is a priority, an essential company for everyone across the board. I know what I did when I called it a national security issue. And that was in advance of what is happening today, because if you know how a business runs, if you can think long term of how things will play out if given the worst conditions, or how things will play out if given the best conditions, I felt like I was a warning the entire time, and persons prefer to ignore that warning for their own selfish reasons of putting who they wanted and getting what they wanted out of a company. And it goes right back to my messaging of, if they would stop thieving for 1 year, it would be okay. And the reason I say that is because it's the truth. They didn't listen to the proper advice that they would have from others, myself included, and I can't say anything other than that at this moment. And right now, what the company needs is someone really strong at the helms with technical knowledge that will get us past this hump. Because if I could see the problems years ago before they happen, it doesn't make me a psychic. It just makes me a person that understands a business, that understands what would happen. And I think that same kind of that same kind of foresight is what you need in managing a country. You need to know all the things that could potentially go wrong and get us right back on track. Now, I don't want the public to think that I don't have a solution for it. The solution is 100% putting the right persons in place, because the team, the core at GB, they're capable of doing the work, but they have to be led by someone who understands that, hey, if we're continuing to put our country at risk, we're also going to be putting our earnings at risk, our revenue at risk, not just for the country, but for the individuals that are out there that rely on power.
And we are already at risk right now.
Exactly. We have cancellations that are happening because persons don't want to come to a place where you don't know if you have electricity today or not, regardless of the schedules that come out. And we just need to understand that responsibility and taking action is the most important thing. It's not about, oh, I hope my friend comes back in power so that I can stay at the company, whichever company it is. You need to hold people accountable. At this point, I held the Council of Ministers accountable. When I was in as a member of parliament, I held the Council of Ministers accountable, who in turn have to follow down that line to hold people accountable. This is not about, being nice. This is the country's future. This is the country's current situation. We cannot continue like this, and we cannot continue with this short-term mindset of thinking and saying, let me just put a bandage over it today and then hope that it's going to be the solution for long term. No. Our country has been constrained and basically has been a victim of short-term thinking for selfish reasons, which is evident in how GB has been handled and how the country was running in the last few years. And we cannot do that anymore. We cannot keep surviving day to day. We need long-term planning from, for the next couple of months, the next few years, up until 10 years from now. Even longer than that. We need to decide, where do we want our country to be? And no one kept any plans in place because everyone was selfish. Everyone comes in there to do their little pet projects, to get the glory for today, to take a picture in a newspaper, to look pretty in their jacket with their little pin on. And then what good do we get from that, Oral? We don't get anything from that. What I need the public to remember, and what I hope the politicians will listen to always, is that we're here for the people. We're here to improve people's lives. We're here to deal with the problems like their earning, like their housing, like their health care. That's what we have to focus on. But we're not focusing on that. We're not focusing on the issues because we have our little pet projects that we want to focus on. And what do we do then? We create the perfect formula, the perfect situation for a demagogue to come in and fool the people that their way is the better way. Because we have been hurting. We did not acknowledge the pains of what our community has been preaching and singing to us for all these years. And then what happens is they say, well, if you guys aren't going to handle the problems that I have, I'm going to go to the demagogue who's going to be very much like how Hitler used to brainwash a bunch of people. We can't allow that. St. Martin has always been a place where when things were going good, you know why it was going good? Because we thought about the people. We helped the people. The same ones that we're asking to go out there and vote. And that's what we have to remember. Do not allow the situation to exist that will make a demagogue and a narcissist thrive. We have been a country of respect and love and helping each other out. Bring that back. Bring that back.
All right, Louis, see, roll you up, boy. I mean,
you rile me up a little bit. You rile me up.
I can see the passion and the love you got for St. Martin.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. You know, we just about out of time. I'm looking at my clock and I said we have 2 to 3 minutes. It's all yours in closing. Anything you want to say to your supporters? Yeah,
I do. You know, when there's a lot of stuff that a lot of topics that are at the heart and at the core of, as you go out and you decide to vote this election, that is important to you. And what I want to remind the public is take the time to listen to a team that has put together a very, very well thought out manifesto of the Party for Progress, which acknowledges all of the challenges that we have had as a country. Go in to look at it. You will see that our complaints, our resolutions are there for the things that matter, such as how we earn, such as getting pension, increasing the pension, such as the housing, the healthcare. Look at it, because we have the solutions. And I know that there's some of you that may not want to go back out and vote. And I want to leave you with this thought that if we don't vote, we are ignoring the history. We are ignoring what the people have done in the past and giving away our future. Remember that. Remember the past. Remember what we have struggled with. Remember the issues that were not dealt with. Give me the opportunity to help solve those issues. Give your number 3, Ludmila de Weever, on the PFP slate, the gold standard, the opportunity to help you solve those issues. Thank you. Love you, St. Martin.